Morning. I'd like to call the April 11th Kankakee County Board meeting to order. Today's invocation is from Tinker Parker.
Gracious God, we thank you for this lovely morning and the beauty of spring you have blessed us with, a time for new beginnings and growth. Bless our board members who are in attendance and for those who could not be here today. We are caring people who work together for the welfare of our county. May we lead through humility and love, integrity and ethics. We pray that you guide us always. Strengthen us as we make tough decisions. Enable us to think and strategize in ways that will achieve great results. Give us clarity to effectively tackle each part of today's agenda. Reveal problem areas and show us the best solutions that will apply. We pray today for all the leaders, nations, states, townships, and counties. Watch over all those who protect and serve our community. Keep them safe from harm, Lord. During these turbulent times, make us people whose words can be trusted and who are faithful in love to you, our families, and our neighbors. We pray for those who recently lost their lives to violence, including heroic police. Watch over them, Lord, each and every day. In Christ's name, amen.
Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Get a roll call, Dan, please.
Mr. Hess. Present. Mr. Tholen. Present. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes. Present. Mr. Seroy. Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Present. Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling. Present. Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Miller. Present. Mr. Long. Present. Mr. Kirkstra.
Present.
Mr. Hunter.
President, glad to see Carol here this morning.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand.
Present.
Ms. Foster.
Present.
Ms. Andrade.
Present.
Ms. Armour Earps. Mr. Ashcraft.
Present.
Ms. Monday.
Present.
Ms. Ripmanick-Emmy.
Present.
Mr. Scanlon.
Present.
Ms. Turner.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Let's see here. We do need a vote to allow board member Andrade in. Is there a motion? Mr. Eckhoff, second. Mr. Scanlon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Welcome. Let's see. Under public commentary, I have two here. First one is from Deb Barron from Kankakee.
Good morning. I just wanted to come today and to tell you thank you for giving us the opportunity to address the mental health crisis in our county. While the outcome of the election was not what we had hoped, to be defeated 2-1 was more disappointing than we thought, but we learned a lot. And our armchair analysis is that there's probably 35 to 40% of the county that will never vote for a tax increase regardless of the merit of the purpose. And there is about 40% of the county that did vote for the tax increase, and that there's probably 30 to 20% of the county that, given more information and more time, that we could have persuaded to vote for the referendum. So we don't feel that it's a lost cause forever. But we did learn two very important things. One, we didn't have enough time. And two, there's a dangerously low level of confidence in government to do the right thing. And we hope to work with you to build confidence in government. Of that 20 to 30% that we believe is persuadable, they recognize the problem, but they're very cynical about the funds being used for the purpose that the referendum was for. And so we offer to work with you to help restore and build confidence in our government. If people don't believe that government will work for them, this democracy experiment is not going to work. And it's not just county government. People brought up the switch and bait of the lottery and how that was going to fund education and then didn't. And so there is support out there for mental health. There is a crisis out there. Just last night, one of our staff notified us that she was at the hospital with a young lady who tried to commit suicide. And this is something that we have to live with, and we have to find solutions to address. So I'm here to say thank you and look forward to opportunities to work with this body to address this crisis. Thank you.
At this point, wanted to try to get Wes out of here. He's got things to do. We have an item at the very end that says bid opening for courthouse furniture. Can I get a motion to move that up, and we can dispense with that? Mr. Miller, Mr. Featherling with a second. All those in favor of moving that up, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Wes,
Aye.
you want to take the mic?
Thank you for moving me up. I got one bid to open. I'll be out of your hair pretty quick. This is for, everyone's aware of the basement renovation that we got going on over at the courthouse right now. We have a section in the northeast corner of the basement that is going to be used for offices. And this is for 12 workstations, I believe, an office setup, chairs, partitions, cubicles, the works to get that space operational as an office area. So I have one bid. I'll go ahead and open this. Typically we have more than one. So what's the procedure? I would ask for
Motion to open, Mr. Hess. Second, Mrs. Parker. All those in favor say aye to open the bid. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And then once we open it, I mean, we don't have more than one, so lowest responsible bidder, or how do we?
That's the way it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the very end. It's not on.
All right, I have a very detailed proposal here from Warehouse Direct. As I mentioned, they're our only bidder. For the 12 workstations in the office setup, I have a bid here of $41,771.06. So this is for the furniture, this is for the installation, putting everything together, and then of course all work would be done in accordance with the appropriate prevailing wage here in our county. So
Thank you. Is there a motion to lowest responsible bidder? Mr. Scanlon, Mr. Eckhoff? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Miller. Mr. Long. Mr. Kirkstra. Mr. Hunter. Mr. Smith. Mr. Hildebrand. Ms. Foster. Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft. Ms. Monday. Ms. Rittman-McEmmy. Mr. Scanlon. Ms. Turner. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Thanks.
thank you.
Appreciate you getting him out here. Thanks for your patience, Mr. Face. I forgot that we were going to get him out the door because he had stuff to do. Moving back, we have more public comment. This is from Theotis Pace from Kankakee. Right back here, sir. Sorry. We need something up front. We
Good
can
morning.
grab it.
My name is Theotis Pace. I reside at 1482 West Bud Boulevard, and I'm here today as the president of the NACP. I missed the last board meeting, and there was a number of calls, and I got an opportunity to look at your last March 14th video of your meeting. And I'm just here to bring data, information regarding the NACP ARP social service grant funding. We met all the necessary requirements. We met with the grantor committee. We attended your March finance meeting, and we also was here and submitted the grant on time. We met all of the necessary requirements. Got a number. We collaborated with existing organizations. we will be the umbrella of New Vision, Morning Star, NACP, and the Eastside Junior Football League. Now, I want to deal with again, I want to applaud those members here that did not get the second to table monies for over 300 and some youth for Eastside football. It was also stated that we have exorbitant fees for the board members. If you see in front of our state's attorney and Dan there, there's a football helmet. That helmet currently is $275. I passed out a sheet that each one of you should receive, breaking down the various fees of organizations in our organization, or in our football league, and also local organization, Bourbonnais Boilers, the Bradley Lions, Peotone, Mantino. Compare their fees, cheerleaders' fees. I also have a document here where there's other organizations' fees are for cheerleaders are just $1,200, $1,400. As we know it, cheer is no longer just an activity, it's a sport. Our team travel. At the bottom of what I passed out to you is locations, tournaments that our kid had visited and participated. Just for FYI, out of our 5 levels of our football team last year, 3 of us, 6U, 8U, and 10U participated in the Northern Illinois United Youth Football Super Bowl. So that means that we are doing things to keep our youth off the street. During the football season, we practice Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday's games. If game on Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, games on Sunday. We average approximately 3.5 hours per day when we are interacting with our kids. We have a number of our former football players and cheerleaders who currently, I'm assuming, if they're not on spring break today, they're either at Spelman, Tennessee State, University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Michigan, University of Michigan, Mr. Jerry Hill. That kid currently just played in the spring football for the University of Michigan, and he's already deemed a number 3 draft choice in the next year's draft. So I'm just here to dispel any time, and again, that's a jersey. Hold the other one up, Rosemary. Those are 2 jerseys, and the helmet. Alderman Jones, can you go up and pull up the other equipment that's up there? I wanted you to see football is an expensive sport. It's and $175 does not meet our expenditures for a given year. It does not meet it. There, even with our parents, do you think we get 100 participation in fundraising? No. Mr. Ashcraft, you're the vice president of the Bradley Lions. They have a volunteer fee. How much is your volunteer fee, Mr. Ashcraft?
$50.
All right, there's other organizations, volunteer fee. People, so you got to charge them a volunteer fee to participate and interact and invest in their respective kids. Eastside, we're just not an organization, we're an institution. We've been here for over 63 years. Matt Olszewski, vice president of People's Bank. We got judges, we got lawyers who've come through this. Kelly O'Connor. He's the president of the Friend of Eastside. You know, I mean, I can go on and on. All I'm asking that anybody in this room ever have a question about Eastside football or the NACP, all you have to do is pick up the phone, email me, nacp3035@aol.com, 815-953-0939. That's my cell number. Again, I went through this packet. We met every requirement. New Vision, gonna do their food pantry, hot meal. Morning Star is gonna do the Greenwood project and also deal with housing. NACP and the Youth Council and Eastside Junior Football. Now, I could be somewhere else dealing with social justice, fighting the like of democracy, and here, I'm here just to deal with about data. This proves $175 does not meet the requirement. Last year, I mean, we spent over $100 and some thousand with our youth, and it did not come from $175. It didn't come from the $10,000 that we got because we was a social service agency last year. It didn't come from the community development block grant that we get for the city. And while I'm dealing with the city of Kankakee, code, if they give you $30,000, you got to have 30 because it's based on reimbursement. It's not like the county where they write you a check and give it to you. We have to spend the money to be able to get in reimbursed. But you know what? People don't ask, well, where do you get the money from? To be able to spend the money to get reimbursed from the city. All I'm just saying is, you have to be political leaders. I challenge you that when you speak on the mic, be factual. I don't ask you to be factual, but if it's dealing with the NACP, everybody know to reach me, and surely, this is the president of Eastside. I'm just the AD. He the man. Maybe you need to call him. But all I'm just saying is, let's be factual when we get on the mic and talk. We just have to be factual. $175, we apply for $15,000 for the NACP Eastside, NACP Youth Council $10,000, and we already know because you guys broke out the money for New Vision, and we already know what we're dealing with the city and Morning Star. So I don't know if all you all read this when it came out on Monday, December 12th, but I did. And we met all the necessary requirements. And we're gonna be able to account for the $354,000 that you have awarded the Kankakee County branch of the NAACP. And again, I wanna thank those individuals who did not come up with the second to table monies to the youth of our community. Thank you, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to vacancy appointments, don't have any today. Presentations, we have a, tell you what, let's, can we read that one into the record? You don't have it? It's a presentation honoring Detective Joni Hart for being awarded the Task Force Officer of the Year by the U.S. Marshals Great Lakes Task Force. Sheriff, do you want to intro that? Okay, thank you. We'll wait for Alderman Jones to tackle that.
You're proud of that.
Then they're gonna get out of Chris's hair. I caught that. Ooh, it's intentional.
Good morning. Guys, if you could come up. Alderman Jones, I wish you'd have left the helmet up here. You know, Jim Rowe, for those that don't know, was a professional football player.
Oh, yeah.
Had to retire to be Hall eligible.
He was captain of the DePaul football team. Yeah.
So thank you all for indulging us here to recognize one of our detectives who is a part of the Great Lakes, and there's two different terms used, so I'll use the official one, the Fugitive Apprehension Unit. I'd like to introduce the people up here. First, to my direct left is the U.S. Marshal of the Central District, Brendan Hefner. Justin Hamrock and Justin Moreau and Craig Komet from the U.S. Marshal Service, all from the U.S. Marshal Service. And the lone female up here with us is Detective Joni Hart, who is an employee of the Kankakee County Sheriff's Office. So a little bit of history before we give Detective Hart her award. Kankakee County, for those of you that don't know, have been part of this apprehension unit for upwards of 12 years. Joni, Detective Hart, has been with this unit for approximately 7 years. Some of you have heard me talk about one of the most dangerous things that law enforcement does, and that is apprehending wanted fugitives. And that's what this task force does. They go after the worst of the worst, the baddest of the bad, and they do a great job, and we're so proud to be part of it. They are based out of Urbana. In addition to the U.S. Marshals, there are a number of municipalities who participate in this task force, and there are also counties such as Iroquois and Champaign who are also a part of this task force in addition to Kankakee. As you all know, I'm a big believer in sharing resources. And what this task force allows us to do is share resources, share manpower. Detective Hart and the task force goes all across the Central District of Illinois apprehending wanted fugitives. When there is a need in Kankakee, they are here in Kankakee. So we get all these resources coming to Kankakee to work on keeping our streets safe. And for that, we are very appreciative. Because the bottom line is, with what these guys do, they get violent people off the streets, which is what we want them to do. So before Marshal Hefner presents Detective Hart, I want to read an email that I received from Justin Hamrock back in February. And it just goes to what Detective Hart is, not only to our department, but to the task force. And I won't read the whole thing because it's a little wordy, but that's okay. Basically, the Central Illinois Task Force Officer of the Year was awarded to TFO, just Task Force Officer Joni Hart, today. This was February 24th. Joni has been a part of the task force for quite a while now, as I said, 7 years approximately, and she's always been a reliable member of the team. Joni's daily and weekly efforts show how trustworthy and reliable she is, as she is always someone we can count on. We appreciate her dedication every day, and not just today. Additionally, Joni's efforts during the tragic murder of Bradley Police Department Sergeant Ripmanick and the assault of Officer Bailey only highlighted her dedication. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that whole process, because when that happened back in December of 2021, Joni, we contacted Joni. Joni was at a hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. Or Nashville or Tennessee? Yeah, Nashville. Going on a family vacation. It was the holidays. They were heading to Florida. Detective Hart didn't continue on to Florida. She came back because of what was going on. And that says a lot about her right there. Her assistance and perseverance during the manhunt showed the exact character of the people we look and hope to have on these teams. We are always proud of the partnership between the United States Marshal Service and the Kankakee County Sheriff's Office, along with the rest of our partnered agencies. Today, Joni received a plaque from Marshal Hefner and the rest of the Central Illinois staff commemorating her achievement. In addition, our Springfield office has 2 large plaques with current and former award winners for both categories. Joni's name has already been placed on this plaque, hung in our halls for all to see. This is really just a small token of the thanks for the large efforts she provides. One more sentence, and it's the best one. There was always a chance Joni takes the award home today and does not make mention of it to anyone, which she did. So thank you for the email. And for that reason, we wanted to ensure you were aware. So, Detective Joni Hart. I would now like U.S. Marshal Brendan Hefner to come up and say a few words and present the plaque to her from the U.S. Marshal Service. Marshal.
Thank you, Sheriff, and it is indeed an honor to be here. As he just stated from my Chief Deputy Hamrock's note that Joni is modest, that's putting it mildly, and for her to get this award twice, while it's good for us, I'm sure she has a little consternation about that, but she is most deservingly. As the note said, it takes dedicated people in order to work in our task force. We just don't take anybody, as the job is very dangerous. What she exemplified during that horrific incident, or after that, involving Bradley PD, we weren't really surprised because that's who she is and how she is. I've even had an opportunity to come over and work with them briefly. She's very deserving of it, but that was quite an endeavor. Just so you know, we cover 46 counties from here all the way to Rock Island. So as the sheriff said, sometimes we need them to come all the way west. But you need to know that just like when you have something here, obviously when those tragic events occurred, we come all the way over here. Justin Hamrock is here. That's my second in command. And also you have Justin Moreau, who supervises out of the Urbana office. He took the lead when the Bradley incident occurred. And also Craig Comet, he supervises the task force. Just so you know, if you want to have an idea how many fugitives we apprehend, last year was 998. They would have, I will tell you, they would have liked to hit 1,000, but we don't fudge the numbers. Craig does not do that. But all joking aside, they work very hard. It can be 24/7, anytime that they may have to respond, and we can always count on Joni. So we take giving these awards out very seriously. And not only do you have the Task Force Officer of the Year, but you also have the U.S. Deputy for our District of the Year in Justin Moreau. And just like her award, it was not just because of that one incident, but we all work together as a team. So in closing, I would also like to say that we couldn't function without the support of people like the sheriff in your county. In this day and age when law enforcement, I don't know any agency, there probably are some, that is not short personnel, but we are your force multiplier. When things occur, your investigators can keep investigating while we go to apprehend these fugitives. So we have a great working relationship. We look for that to continue because we are nothing without the participants of the task force. So once again, I will present this very deserving award to TFO Hart. Before I leave, and I will tell you, this was not planned or staged, but you just had the president of the NAACP up here talking, and I will tell you that youth activities, whether they are sports or anything else, might stop a youth from being on our list. I coached JFL before. My chief is involved, Hamrock is involved, Comet has been involved. We can tell you firsthand, you can pay for some things, even if it stops one kid from getting in trouble later. You can pay now, but it will cost you a lot more later. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and congratulations on a deserving honor. Moving on, we have a report from the state's attorney up next on the agenda. So, Jim?
So there was a conversation in the April meeting, must have been the February meeting, regarding the appointment process of county board member at the time, Andy Wheeler, as well as the residency issue. So I think for those members who are new to the board, since that occurred back in 2020, early 2021, I just want to walk through a timeline of events, how it started up until today. I will try to be as quick as possible. Okay. Oh, I guess got to turn it on, huh? All right, so initially on October 13th of 2020, that's when County Board Member Wheeler announced during the meeting his intention to resign as the District 18 County Board Member and stated that his resignation would be effective November 6th of 2020. We know that because that is in the October 13th, 2020 board meeting minutes. On November 6th, that would be the date that the resignation became effective. County Board Member Wheeler at the time on October 13th had stated that that would be the date he'd be moving out of District 18.
It's 15.
What's that?
It's 15.
It's District 15.
Yeah, it's a typo on it.
I apologize. So District 15. So that's the date his resignation became effective. November 10th, he was on the agenda for appointment to District 26. No action was taken at that meeting due to lack of notice to a third party. At that meeting, when it was being discussed whether or not notice had been made, which you have to do when there's a vacancy, County Board Member Jim Byrne was on the board at that time. He was the, I believe, chair of the County Libertarian Party, and because they had received more than 5% of the vote in an election prior to that date, they were considered to have full party status. So they were required to be given the same notice that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party received. That hadn't been done. So no action was taken on November 10th. The issue, for lack of a better word, was punted to the next meeting, which occurred on November 18th. On November 18th, there was a vote taken and Andrew Wheeler was appointed to that vacancy. We know that because of the November 18th, 2020 board meeting minutes. They reflect that appointment. Now, during that meeting, there was discussion from County Board Member Snipes about a residency requirement, whether someone had to live in a district for 30 days prior to appointment. Our office had researched that. We looked at the county code, state statutes, the election code. But Board Member Snipes had raised that issue, and he asked us at the time, to his credit, to submit a letter to the Illinois Attorney General seeking an official opinion. We did that. On November 25th, that should say 30-day residency, but we submitted an inquiry to the Illinois Attorney General, and we know that because we have the letter to the Illinois Attorney General dated November 25th, 2020. From December of 2020 through March 2021, we had received no response from the Attorney General's office. Now, during that time, we were having discussions within our office, and I can tell you the way that that statute reads, which regards the 30 days, the exact language is, it's to determine whether someone is a qualified voter. And the way the statute reads, to determine if someone is a qualified voter, they had to live in the election district for 30 days next preceding the election. 30 days next preceding the election. So when you look at that, and now it's November 15th, okay, of 2020, when you look at that language, we interpret next preceding, if you look it up in the dictionary, I had to because I had no idea what the hell that meant, to be quite honest with everyone. When you look it up, next preceding the election is defined as before the next, okay, next preceding, so before the next, otherwise it would say following. So before the next election. The next election at that point would have been the February municipal election in 2021. So under our interpretation of that, if someone was in their election district on November 15th, they're certainly in their district and will be for more than 30 days prior to the next preceding election, the February election. The other interpretation of that is, as Mr. Snipes argued, that maybe you have to live in the district for 30 days, okay? We didn't agree with that interpretation, but we submitted the letter to the Attorney General. not having received a response, in March of 2021, we had that second meeting. Now, this is what we discussed in January. Some members thought there hadn't been a second meeting. There was a second meeting. It was the March 8th, 2021 meeting. This is the meeting at which Mr. Hildebrand was appointed to the county board. We declared that vacancy and did the appointment. And this is the meeting where they again declared a vacancy and appointed Mr. Wheeler to that county board. This was the curative appointment. This is the meeting where we said, regardless of how this is going to be interpreted, this is going to cure it for all time. We know that because it's reflected in the March 8th, 2021 board meeting minutes, and in April 13 of 2021, all members again unanimously approved the March 8th board meeting minutes. That appointment was unanimously approved by this board, right? The point of that second meeting was specifically so we didn't end up where we're at today, still discussing this stuff. It was to ensure for all time that it was corrected regardless of how the Attorney General ruled. And I'm going to play a brief discussion here that took place at that meeting where that was actually affirmed, and then I'm going to show you the roll call vote so there's no doubt as to what was discussed and how the vote went down.
Yes, thank you, Jim, and thank you for researching that information. Sometimes we come to the meetings of the minds when we are at odds, but in this case we do have a state's attorney, and we also have the Attorney General's office, and then even the courts if we have to. I did have a court warrant to action on, it's on my desk now, which now I don't have to basically mitigate in the court to bring it, because we're now going into a process that we're going to kind of follow the law as far as declaration is concerned. Sometimes we are in the minority when we are doing such, but just rest assured that it's important that every board member here is heard. Those individuals that were of like mind, and then Ms. Peters, who had to step across the aisle and probably got some unnecessary comments. You know, again, we applaud those individuals that will look at a situation, that will call, that will ask questions like she did and others to kind of get some clarity. But in the process, we come to a resolution where as we're now correcting, and that's the overall objective or overall intent of the process, is to make sure that we are in accordance with law. And so I applaud your efforts and also your constant communication. A lot of times we agree, disagree, we'll look at the different perspectives, and then but one of the things I do applaud you on is you want to always do the right thing, so thank you.
And I want to thank you, because anytime you and I have had a difference of opinion, you've always kept it about the subject, not the person. So I appreciate that from you. Wait till this truck passes. After that, there was a roll call vote taken on the appointment to appoint County Board Member Wheeler to the County Board.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Aye. Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Salina.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling.
Aye. Swanson, aye. Featherling, aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith from Bourbonnais.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
And then the next item, so and you can hear Mr. Hildebrand, he had been appointed first, so he was able to vote too. So unanimous approval. So what, again, the March 8th, 2021 meeting, that is the second meeting. It did occur. There's a video record of it. The vacancy was declared. Andrew Wheeler was appointed to that vacancy. This is the second appointment, and it was a curative appointment, which you heard in the comments. This was correcting those very issues. And again, we know that by both the March 8th and the April 13th, 2021 board meeting minutes. The next thing that occurs is on June 15th of 2021, the Attorney General finally sends an opinion on the November 20th, 2020 inquiry. They issue an unofficial opinion. They did not issue an official opinion. They indicated that, again, there was no precedent, meaning there were no prior Attorney General opinions that weighed in on this issue. They interpreted to require 30 days in the district. They said that they couldn't resolve the issue without further information. Well, at that time in June, the 90-day issue is completely moot, and it's moot due to that curative appointment on March 8th of 2021. Because by March 8th of 2021, County Board Member Wheeler had certainly lived in that district, if not for at least 30 days, well over 120 days, I believe, by that time. So any 30-day requirement was more than satisfied. There's no activity on this matter until November 6th of 2022. That's when we received a request for quo warranto or permission to file a quo warranto action, and that was submitted to the state's attorney's office and the Illinois Attorney General's office by 2 county board members. The basis is the residency. So now we're back to whether he lived there for 30 days or whether he still lives there. When that request came in on the 6th, I believe that was a Saturday, maybe a Sunday, our office received it. We took it seriously. We had it investigated by law enforcement. The investigation undertaken there was we reviewed all documents that were submitted by us to the requesting parties. Those included some copies of property tax records from the Treasurer's website, as well as Political Action Committee or PAC filings with the State Board of Elections. We also had law enforcement go out and interview neighborhood residents of Mr. Wheeler's. They interviewed the tax assessor to make sure that the tax filings were done appropriately. They had letters confirming residency. All of this was considered. In addition to that investigation that was undertaken, our office reviewed the law. The law on that issue is a case called Maxim. That was a 2011 case. It went all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court. That's where they get into the legal definition and how one determines residence or non-residency within the election code, whether someone's eligible for an office or not when there's a residency requirement. That is effectively the Rahm Emanuel case from Chicago 2011 election, when there was an issue whether he abandoned his residency in Chicago when he worked in DC or vice versa. So that is the quintessential case on residency in the realm of electoral law. We did not proceed on that because, and I'm going to pass out a copy here in a second, our entire investigation, all of our findings are included in there, and that walks you through why we didn't proceed on each point, what the law is, why we did not feel we could ever meet an evidentiary burden in that case. However, when a state's attorney's office and attorney general's office are asked to file a quo warranto or give permission to do so, you only have those two choices. So under that statute, when we decline to proceed, we grant authority to the requesting party to proceed on their own. So we declined to proceed on November 15th of 2022. The requesting party still could not go forward until they received a response from the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's response came on January 12th of 2023. I'm going to give you a copy of that letter too. The Attorney General's office, Kwame Raoul's office, looked at the same evidence that we had. All of the interviews, all of the documents, every bit of evidence, and they too declined to file the quo warranto action. So if there is some grand conspiracy here, the Attorney General is being accused of it too by the requesting parties. But there was no conspiracy, because when two independent offices, who quite frankly don't always get along, looked at the same facts and the same evidence, they too declined to pursue it, but they did grant authority to the requesters to pursue that action. To date, I'm not aware of that action being filed. That doesn't mean it won't be or can't be, but up until today, it has not been filed. So at this time, I'd like to pass around these letters. I'm going to encourage all the members of this board to read the results of our investigation in its entirety, and to review. It's a one-page letter from the Attorney General's office. So there's about, I think, 5 pages from our office and then the page from the AG's office that walks you through the entirety in that investigation. The only thing that has been omitted is some of Mr. Wheeler's personal information, which we did not want to include in that, which would literally be maybe numbers from an address, nothing of any substance. But every piece of document available to law enforcement and to our office was reviewed in its entirety, and that include property leases, sales transactions, interviews of neighbors, the person who sold the property, the park manager. Everything was looked into. And our office concluded exactly what the Attorney General's office concluded. There was no evidence with which to proceed on a quo warranto action. So I hope that at some point it puts this issue to rest. This has gone on now, you know, if you want to go back to 2020, but from at least March of 2021, when this issue was resolved for all time by a board that unanimously voted for that appointment. And even if there was still a question, all of those issues are certainly resolved by the most recent election, in which Mr. Wheeler in his own right was elected to that district. And there was a time to contest residency, and that was during the petition contest period from the 2022 election. So that would have been in late 2021, maybe early 22. I forget when petitions were due. I know some of those deadlines were changed. But that was the time at which someone could have contested the residency of any candidate running for any district position, and there was no such contest made. So I hope this resolved those issues. This board's got a lot of big issues before it. Both my office and the Attorney General's office have concluded that this is not one of them. But those objectors are more than able to pursue that remedy on their own if they choose to do so. So I hope that brings everyone up to date, lays out the timeline as best I can, and resolves any unanswered questions. So thank you. Thanks for making time for me in the agenda on this.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for the state's attorney?
Okay.
Mr. Snipes?
Okay, we need to just clarify a couple of things. I followed the presentation, but when I requested the quo warranto or it going over to the court, that was in November of 2020. The issue that we had before is not whether or not he won the election, but whether he forsweared or committed perjury because the 30-day residency required had not been done. In February, when asked that question on November 18th, had you resided in the district 30 days, he responded, and you can go back, he said it in the affirmative, yes. The problem with that is if he was in fact, if he changed districts, then in October, he would have automatically had to give up the county board seat. And we know that he was a county board chairman because he said his last day would be on November the 6th. That's his last day. On that same day, he also registered in District 26, which is why the Attorney General's office asked what was his date of residency. We are not arguing whether or not he won an election and all the political grandstanding. Basically, when I spoke and I said that we didn't have a second meeting until the next year, you stated
That's not what you said, Mr. Snipes.
Oh, yeah, go back, because you
denied that there was ever a second meeting.
I said there was no second meeting before he was appointed as the chair. I said in November, you said you have your facts wrong, sir. I took it right off the thing. And the Attorney General saw it that way too. You wasted a lot. So we went through the process of hearing what it is, but I didn't have it. We discussed it because you thought we had the meeting with the Libertarian Party not being served, that was at the full county board meeting.
That was at the
of
first
which I
meeting.
said. So that was the county board meeting.
The first meeting.
That was the county board meeting. So then at the county board meeting, we went to November 18th. That's when I stated that he had not resided in the district, and I asked, now, according to the Attorney General's office, they said you could have asked for a formal opinion or informal opinion, of which I guess you went with the informal opinion. That's why they took longer. However, we found out that the 30-day residency requirement, as he so eloquently pointed out, was not new case law that happened in 2020, but he referred to Supreme Court, appellate court, and the Attorney General's opinion prior to the November 2020 date, which means that these laws were in existence back then. And so therefore, the conclusion should have been that the 30-day residency requirement, had that been the case, we could not have appointed him on November 18th because he did not qualify. That means you disenfranchised all those other individuals that was in the 26th district from applying. This is where we were. Then you stated that I brought in your record a court warrantor action. That would have been in 2020. I asked, we have 4 emails regarding that. And the last one, you said that there was no change. You and Ms. Nicholson had looked over it. There was no change in your opinion. And then I was at Kwame Wau's election, I said, you all don't answer because we're still waiting on a Attorney General's opinion that I've never received, though I inquired. And it was Elizabeth Monroe, the deputy director, that basically stated we did respond. And they gave it to us back in June 15 of 2021. You never made me privy of that information. And it was held for that year and a half. So I'm still saying I'm waiting on an Attorney General's opinion. That's why in March, other than the declaration is what our argument was, that once you declare the vacancy, because the vacancy had never been declared, that was our issue then. You told me, said, you're right, I asked some individuals or whatever. 2 different issues. Residency was in November. March was the declaration. And from that point
The declaration of what?
Declaring the vacancy. That's what we had our argument. That was the considering. You said, you're right, we do have to declare.
That wasn't the issue, and that was not the issue that was submitted on November 25th to the
No,
the
the
Attorney General's
25th
office.
is the 30-day residency. In
And
March
you
30th,
agree that the 30-day residency was resolved at the March meeting?
No, I didn't agree.
You still don't agree with that?
I voted to the point that you stated, based upon your information, that the declaration was, and you brought them in. The problem that I have
by March, though, you would agree that he had definitely lived in that district for 30 days by March of 2021,
by March,
correct?
If he stated he lived up in there by that time and he was elected, well, he was appointed. So
you must have believed that because you voted yes, didn't you?
No, I voted yes because you stated that they did the declaration, so we cleared it up.
But you didn't think he lived there for 30 days in March. In March of 21, you still had questions about the 30-day issue?
March was never the issue with me, but yet you went into March. So I said, okay, if you state that this is the case, and we voted. So as far as that's concerned. However, when the Attorney General opinion came out, because you're the legal advisor of the board, it agreed that the 30-day residency requirement was. Well, if that's the case, on the voter's registration card, it does tell you that you have to live in the precinct or the district for 30 days. Well, that brings us up to the point of false swearing. And it also brings us up to the point that perjury comes in, and that was a Class 3 felony.
That's insane.
If you basically, because it was a violation of the election
You need to get
code.
your money back from your law school, Mr. Snipes.
No, it's
because
not the law school.
Mr. Dan Hendrickson can tell you no one has to wait 30 days when they move to
No, they don't have
register
to
to
wait 30
vote.
days, but when we appoint them, that's their election to the board. So they would have had to qualify.
Which would
And that's what the Attorney General-
which would require them to being a legal voter, which goes back to that 30 days.
So what did the Attorney General state?
The Attorney General has stated in an unofficial opinion, they interpret next preceding election, even though it translates to before the next election, they somehow interpret that to say you have to live within your district for 30 days prior to appointment. I don't know how they find that. When you look specific to the municipal code, the 55 ILCS, when you go into the municipal code, it says with clarity, you must live in that ward, in that district, in that municipality for a certain amount of time prior to the election or prior to appointment.
But the
When you go
Supreme-
to the county code says before the next preceding election. So there is a significant disagreement between the Attorney General's interpretation of that and our interpretation of that, and there is no case law to resolve it. But by June of 2021, and certainly by March of 2021, the 30 days was no longer an issue.
What
It had
we're
been
saying
resolved, and you agreed with that because you voted yes.
No, I didn't agree with that. I agree with your opinion that we could declare the vacancy, and I said so. Therefore, if you state it, it's over.
That was
with.
a vote to appoint
However,
Mr. Wheeler, not to declare the vacancy.
No.
Yes,
well,
it
no,
was.
we declared the vacancy, but even if we declared the vacancy on March 26th, we would have had, first of all, he would have had to resign.
It was March 8th.
When I did a FOIA, there was no letter of resignation from Mr. Wheeler on that day. The other thing is, the process would have had to start all over again, which meant that the Democratic, the Libertarian, them would have had to have been served, then they would have had to resubmit it. All of this was just more of panamization, which means that all they did was take them out and put them back in as the chair. So therefore, we did not follow the law.
But the
as far as
Attorney
that's
General
concerned.
disagrees with you. The State's Attorney's Office agrees
Attorney
with you.
General does not
and
disagree
you have an
with
option
me. They
to
asked
bring
you
that.
two questions of which
You have an option to
never
bring that to
answered.
court, and you haven't.
No.
You still haven't done anything about it. You're so concerned, but you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is. But you'll put the taxpayers' money where your mouth is. Because this has cost the taxpayers money for this investigation.
First of
all the
all,
time of this county board. You'll spend their money on this
on the county
frivolous
board
investigation,
floor,
but not your own.
On this county board floor, especially if I got the floor, because I listened to you. I went through the
Well, it
presentation.
says State's
all that.
Attorney's presentation on the agenda.
No, yes,
It's
it says
not a
State's
Q&A.
Attorney, and they asked for the court. So my thing is, I'm telling you now, if you mistake some facts, it's a fact. We never brought any I never brought any warrant action to you. So, but in your letter,
Sure you did.
Stated,
Sure you did. You suggested.
Mr. Bruck
and
brought
asked
that to
me.
you.
Mr. Snipes, your signature is on
I don't
that
care
letter.
if my signature's on
You
anything.
submitted that
My
inquiry to
signature
the
was on
Attorney
there
General.
because three
The
people
Attorney General
from that district.
No. This
it's not
is your
what you wanna
signature,
do.
top left.
Yes.
Top left.
My
You
signature.
signed this request.
And I sit back and said, when three people came up and said, we want to get.
Who were the three people, Mr. Snipes?
They're on that piece of paper.
No, some of these names you can't even read.
Well,
who were the three people that encouraged you to sign this?
Whoever gave you that document.
So you just signed something they told you to do without agreeing
I signed
what
a
was in it.
document that says, go to the state's attorney because I already have a quote on that file.
I'm going to pass this around to the board. I've only got one copy, so please make sure I get it back. This is the letter submitted by top left Robert Snipes and others requesting the quo warranto.
No, they stated that Mr. Wheeler had not lived there and there's some other things. You have my number, so you could have even called. However, Mr. Bruck brought that to you.
You sent that 2
Not a
days
county
before
board
an
member.
election, and it was on social media before our office even
I
received
didn't send
it.
anything.
That
You
was
keep
political
saying,
in
I
nature.
sent you. No. I agree with them that it needed to be investigated. And so I said, yes, I will lend my signature out of 26 because they felt they didn't have the representation. So no. So when it comes to your office, all you could have did was call. However, you didn't. But to say that Mr. Snipes brought it to you, no. Just because you see my name, you don't
You're
do
even on
anything
the
else.
initial
A
email,
third
Mr.
party
Snipes.
brought it. You represent the county board. So if I wanted to bring it to you, I'd have gave it to you.
Mr. Snipes, your signature's on there, and it's addressed to me.
No, they were coming to the county board and they were going to do speak out.
Mr.
How
Snipes, that
sudden
is
it gets in your
addressed to
presence-
me in a letter with your signature on it.
No.
Yes.
Who brought it
is.
to you?
It
Did I
was
bring it to
emailed
you?
to me by you, by Daryl Bruck.
No. You ain't got an email from me. I don't have. You don't have one email from me. This was given to you by Daryl Bruck, not by Robert Ellington Snipes.
And you didn't sign it?
No, my signature's up on there to sit back and support them in their endeavor to get someone to represent
Well, the
them.
Attorney General got that wrong too then, because the Attorney General
The Attorney
responded to you
General
as well.
got what you sent them, so that's why they said not at this time. So if we're gonna clean,
We sent them evidence. They got what you sent them too.
No.
Yes. They did get what you sent them, and they got
You
what
didn't
I
get-
sent them.
No, you
and
got
they
what they
declined to
sent them.
file it for the same reasons, because there's no evidence.
They have no documentation from me other than I said, and I did not ask
Other
them
than
for
what
a
you
quote.
sent them.
No, other than 2020. So we're not going to keep miscuing the issue, but I am going to say the fact is there is no statute limitation on, there is. It was 3 years in 2012. It's now 7 years. So therefore, the false weighing means that we allow someone to be appointed that at that time was not qualified. That was my argument. That's still my argument. I don't move from that. Now, when we got the Attorney General's opinion, why it was held for me from over a year and a half, when I was the one that requested it, I don't know. So if I'd have had that, we would have re-examined and readdressed it back in 2021.
And we would have arrived at the same place we're at
would
today.
not have,
30
because
days was more than met in residency in March
it may
8th
have been
and
met,
in June.
but in the initial appointment, someone else would have had to be appointed because he had not yet qualified.
That's not
Period.
accurate.
Yes, that is accurate. You're telling me
not
on
accurate.
November 18th he qualified after reading the Attorney General's opinion.
After reading the Attorney General's unofficial opinion, which their opinion is that he has to reside within the district for 30 days. Our opinion is exactly what the language of the statute says. 30 days prior to the next, or 30 days next preceding the election, which means before the next election. He would have certainly lived in that district for more than 30 days. In January, in February, in March, when he was reappointed, certainly in June. All those issues were resolved.
What you're doing now is you were saying, well, it wasn't right in November, but we're going to make it right in March. You again denied the people in the 26th district the opportunity of presenting someone. Was it ever declared a vacancy? No, sir, it wasn't.
There was a vacancy declared twice,
You
Mr.
took a person
Snipes.
out and you put a person in. If we did a declaration, the county board has to declare the vacancy and it has to go out to the respective parties. It did not. Everything
Snipes,
happened in one day.
It did. In fact, at that meeting, you raised that issue, and Mr. Seroy pointed out that he had the certified mail receipt signed by, at the time, Jerry Cody, who was the chairwoman of the Democratic Party, saying that she had received that notice.
No,
so
that was in
your first
November.
argument was that the Democrats hadn't received the notice.
No, they did not. They received the notice.
The facts state for
They
speak for
received the
themselves.
notice.
These are issues you can bring up in court if you choose to pursue it.
No,
we're not going to get anywhere here.
But-
I've always
but
been
you
able to
keep-
disagree
if
with
you
you
continue
without
to-
being disagreeable. I feel like that's getting
But you
strained
can't
right
keep
now.
interrupting me. I didn't interrupt you. So my thing was, if we're going to come to the truth of the issue, one is, you didn't get anything from me. Just because I signed something to support someone does not mean that I'm asking you to go out. If you was going to do that for me, you should have did it in 2021. We requested 4 times.
We did do it in
Not
2021.
In 2020. I requested it 4 times in an email.
That was submitted in 2020. The vote was on the 18th. That was when you raised it, and we submitted it less than 7 days later. It was
Correct.
submitted to the Attorney General.
But when I said let's take it to the court, because they said we need a finding of fact, that goes to the courts. And I asked you 4 times to take it to the court. It was
No,
never
you asked
taken.
us to seek that official opinion from them. And when you submitted the request for a quo warranto, which the statute requires you to do exactly how you did it in November of 2022, which is that letter you signed
2020
requesting the
is
quo
when I
warranto.
submitted one.
You
And it
didn't
was
submit
never
one.
acted upon.
No.
You only acted upon
That
because David
request
Brooke
was
brought that
submitted
stuff
to the Attorney General's office, Mr. Snipe.
No, so you
Yes, it was.
were screwing. Well, we'll deal with the issue. The quo warranto actually should have been in November of 2020. So that's why I'm correcting the record, because my emails say that.
The first time.
So what I would do is, we will, I guess, deal with this issue, but the fact is, and fact still remains, in November of 2020, he did not qualify to be appointed. And his county board appointed, and then everybody, we want to call for motions and everything else, they had no clarity as far as that was concerned. You all came back, as I said, next year, but you told me I was absolutely wrong, that there was a second meeting. I told you not in 2020. It was in 2021, but not in 2020.
I don't
You go
believe
back
that
and
was
listen
the
to tape.
distinction, but regardless, there was a second meeting. By that time, he had lived in the district for more than 30 days, so he certainly would have been a legal voter. You voted yes, as well as everyone else, to appoint him, and those matters were resolved. That 30-day issue was more
But
than
the
resolved by
2020
March of
still
2020.
remains of the false swearing. That's what we asked. That's what y'all keep evading, and that's the issue.
No
that's
one's
still-
evading that, Mr.
No,
Snipes.
that's
It's
the
not a
issue that
false
you're evading.
swearing.
Because you never, why didn't I get this Attorney General's report until after I said, the Attorney General's office not responded. They come back, and Elizabeth Monroe, the deputy director, said we did respond over a year and a half ago.
Yep.
So y'all
and at the
skewed
time
the
they
issue.
did,
We
9
can't make a
months
wrong
later,
to a wrong
it was
and then
moved.
make it right. It's not going to happen.
Well,
Because
that's exactly what we should be doing. If something is wrong, if something's incorrect, you want to make sure that you cure it. And that's why in March of 21,
no, I said we
before
don't take a wrong to make the wrong
I don't
right when
follow
it's
that.
still wrong.
I don't.
No. So that's my position. And then again, y'all skewing a lot of things because the Attorney General did not agree with you in that regard based upon the information you submitted. That's when they said there was no action because at that time, this wasn't 2020. And the inquiry was for 2020, not 2022. So they can play with the numbers, you can play with the game, but the fact is he was not qualified November 18th. And then again on this board, he said that he lived there 30 days. When I asked that question, I did live there 30 days. Well, you could not, because you would have immediately vacated the seat in October. So it can't be both. Either you were legal for the November 18th, or you were legal because you held the seat after you claimed you lived there. So that means you was in another district, but still representing some other district. That is, again, something that is not right, period. Now, you want to call it false warrant or whatever you want to call it, collusion, whatever it is, he could not have been here. His last paycheck for that $900 some odd was in November for him being there, all the way through November 6th. Then he registered for another district.
And that's the date we reflected that the district.
So November 7th would have been the first day that he would have been, because he worked here as the chairman until November 6th. So my last day, that was at October. So I understand what I'm talking about.
We're saying the same thing, because we're both agreeing that the vacancy occurred November 6th. And we're both agreeing that he was initially appointed on November 18th, which is less than 30 days. Where we differ is you believe that he was not eligible at that time because he hadn't lived in the district for 30 days by November 18th, and that's based upon the Attorney General's interpretation of that statute. Where what I'm saying is we believed at that time that based on the plain language of the statute, next preceding election, that it didn't require him to have lived in the district already for 30 days. Again, you look at the municipal code, it's very clear. It says prior to the election. In the county code, it doesn't say that. In this county's code of ordinances, it doesn't have that requirement. In the election code, it doesn't have that requirement. So the Attorney General is interpreting the word qualified voter from the election code as requiring 30-day residency in the district. I don't know where they get that interpretation from, quite frankly. And when you read their opinion, they just conclude that's what it means. Anyway,
they cited a Supreme Court case.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rowe has the floor.
The Supreme Court case was actually the Maxim case, because that's the Rahm Emanuel case. But where I think we both, I can't imagine we couldn't agree on this. At the March meeting, we wanted to make sure that, because we were still waiting for the Attorney General opinion, let's resolve it either way. Now, clearly more than 30 days have passed. So at that March meeting, we again declared that vacancy, and and the board appointed Chairman Andy Wheeler, and then elected him chairman at that meeting. So there were 2 elections for chairman, 3, I guess, if you count Mr. Seroy's election in the interim, and there were 2 votes to place Mr. Wheeler on the county board by appointment.
Mr. Eckhoff had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Rowe, you just went ahead and said that there was a declaration of vacancy. Did anybody else go ahead and apply during that time? Because I don't believe that anybody else applied from that district.
I don't know. My office doesn't receive the
Well, okay, but nobody else applied during that district. So the process was followed. That's my only point that I wanted out there.
Even if they didn't apply, let's say before November 10th, when it was on the agenda, there was still that period from the 10th to the 18th when it was publicly highlighted that vacancy existed because of the fact that we had to punt it to effect proper notice. So there was another 8-day period there.
And we always have openings. I mean, at the end of our agenda, you see that there's openings on committees as well, so thank you.
Ms. Monday, you had something?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, State's Attorney Rowe, for the time and effort that you have put into this, and also to all of the police departments and everyone who had to prove that everything that we did was accurate and above board. As a county board member representing my district, I appreciate everyone's time and looking forward to moving on and leaving this put to bed. Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Rowe, and I appreciate the comments of Peggy Sue Monday. And I would appreciate with specificity, Mr. Rowe, you indicated that external resources were provided. I know you are, for example, we see the AG communication. We see your name regarding your office, what other entities and to what extent were resources provided, investigations, et cetera, regarding why we're here at this point in terms of addressing this particular matter, which County Board Member Snipes has professed?
I would say probably the Sheriff's Department and to some extent maybe the Assessor's Office and our office, Civil Division.
Okay, any other entities?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just to clarify something, if you look at the last page of the letter that we submitted to the Attorney General, all of those, or the response to the requesters for the quo warranto, you'll see all the exhibits that were included in that response. So all those documents were provided, and those documents were also not only provided to the requesters, they were also provided to the Attorney General. So they had full access to everything that we had access to in reaching our determination. And they have the ability, of course, to go out and do any further investigation that's required. They never called with any questions, anything like that.
So, Mr. S., did you have something?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. This question, I guess, is for Mr. Rowe. Outrage is a 501(c) organization, isn't it?
You know, I'm not familiar with that, and even if they are, I know there are certain instances in which even a nonprofit can engage in lobbying or political advocacy. There's limitations on that, but I couldn't speak to what subdivision of 501(c)(3) they are, what their stated mission is. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go down that and surmise anything.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Yeah.
Thought I saw. Was there anybody else first time? Second time?
Thank you. I just want to read the Attorney General conclusion, and I'm going to read the last sentence, the final couple of sentences. He said, finally, an individual seeking appointment to fill a vacancy on the county board where the members are elected from county board districts is required to be a legal voter, which requires the individual to reside in the particular election district for at least 30 days prior to appointment. Whether your appointed county board member who underlies your inquiry resided in the election district for 30 days prior to its appointment is a factual question that cannot be resolved in a legal opinion of this office. And so therefore, he basically concludes, and they were very thorough in almost 8 pages of this. They cited court cases, the whole 9 yards. So they were very thorough in this. So it wasn't that they just gave an opinion. So anyone that wants to see their opinion, you can go to the Facebook. I posted it. It's very specific as to the law is concerned, and he cites cases. Or the lady that did it, Ms. Patton, cited the cases in this case that basically dealt with the opinion. One of the Supreme Court says it's a well-set opinion. The reason that we do this is so that nobody can go from one district to another district and then throw themselves into office or wherever, evading the system. Therefore, according to them, it springs from the Illinois Constitution and according to the state Supreme Court, is you don't just take one facet of the law, you have to add all of it in to get the total picture. And that's a well-settled principle in law. So in this particular case, that's what the Attorney General's office did. In your case, you just took the county and the whole 9 yards. They stated you had to do with the election code and the Constitution. They brought the whole picture, and they said that's how they concluded that the 30-day requirement, because Illinois requires a 30-day residency requirement. That's what they said. I didn't say it, so that's where I read it.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. Their interpretation is that Illinois requires that 30-day residency requirement, and by March that would have been resolved. I mean, it's.
Mr. Long.
I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been discussing this for more than 2 years now, and it's quite obvious that it's not going to get resolved today here in this room. And I think we've listened to this ad nauseum for that period of time. I would like to, I don't know if it's a motion or whatever, we have other business to attend to today. I would like to move on to the agenda today and thank Mr. Rowe for his presentation. But until a higher authority has something to say about it, I think we need to move on.
And I just want to say, Robert, I have always gotten along with you, even when we disagreed. We've never been disagreeable. You heard my comments even at that meeting back then when we were working what I believed in March of 21 to ultimately resolve this issue for all time. There's no ill will here. As far as I'm concerned, it's a difference of opinion. It's never been anything personal.
I'll say the same thing as far as not personal, just in this case, political.
Understood.
All right, moving on to the ARPA report. We did a ARPA report the first year, so you know that we're a governmental body that is not required to do any type of these transparency reports. Once you get over a certain threshold, it's required by the act in itself. We're doing it anyway because we, as this board knows, we wanted that transparency of showing just exactly where the money was going, what the processes are, what the rules are, with the hopes that you know, some of the you know, as we found through the efforts of Jasmine, that if people know about the program, they come to us for those disbursements. And we have heard that over and over again, that, you know, we just didn't know that X or Y or Z municipality was doing any of this. We come to the county because we have done such a good job in getting that out there. So with that, I'll leave it to Jasmine to run through the report. Steve's here to answer questions about, you know, any of the I guess the root of the numbers that are in there. Mr. Hunter, do you have a question first?
I do, and I want you to refresh my memory. I remember meeting at Ryan Spear on St. Patrick's Day, and I can't remember what year it was, when the underserved in our community, macro, meaning NAACP, the city, Kankakee, Morning Star Baptist Church, which is the largest African-American church in the county. I don't know if, and in subsequent meetings, KCCSI, Garden of Prayer, which is the largest social service agency for African-Americans, Recom Family Services, Dwayne Dean, and I'm trying to remember who else may have been at that luncheon meeting in which we had the County Board Chairman Wheeler there. To advise these particular entities, because I had mentioned him. I want to make sure that we're at the table when these ARPA funds are being discussed, and also be a part of the allocation of the funds. And he agreed to do so. This may be a one-time phenomenon in terms of the allocation of funds, but I do remember that the chairman was very open and amenable to meeting with those entities and discussing preparation, the guidelines at that particular moment, and his readiness to interface with those entities who were present to make sure that the allocation of funds would be fair, transparent, and equitable, and that his reputation was at stake in terms of that particular process being open. And he would have a pragmatic reputation or procedures regarding the allocation of funds. Do you remember what year that was? 2 or 3 years? How long ago was that?
It was before we got the money.
Yeah, and that was that 20?
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, St. Patrick's Day of 20. So you had started out interfacing with the underserved members 3 years ago.
Thank you. So Jasmine, you've got the mic if you want to run through some highlights or the report, just so you know. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Can everyone hear me? Okay. First, just want to thank Chairman Wheeler, the county board, and Steve, our finance director, who's here to answer any deeper financial questions. This report, a lot of effort went into this report. This is to highlight last year, the 2022 ARPA report. So as Chairman Wheeler mentioned, this report is for transparency, and it's to be used for informational purposes only. We just want to be transparent with what the board did last year. Okay, so table of contents, I'll let you, I knew that was gonna happen. Thanks, Steve. I'm very clumsy. So Chairman, message from the chairman, updates to the law, American Rescue Plan Act 2022 allocation, same thing as we did before for 2021. You're gonna see that, all of you have a copy. Thank you, Kelly. And then the Kankakee County Community Needs Assessment. And then I'm gonna talk about the Kankakee County Social Services Program because that is actually the next phase that you guys will go into moving forward. So Chairman, I'm not gonna read the message that you put in here, but a word from the chairman really just talks about one thing that I do want to point out. On early February 2023, both the state of Illinois and the federal government announced that the COVID-19 public health emergency will end next month on May 11, 2023. So we've kind of been through the last couple of years allocating the money. The board has, the chairman, everyone, but the next phase is now you guys are moving into the partnerships for the social services fund. So $2 million was allocated to that. The funds have to be spent by 2026. So I want to make sure that I point that out. Oh, let me go back here. This clicker moves fast. Okay, so updates to the law. Sorry. Clicking too fast. Kelly, can you help me out up there, please? Thank you. Updates to the law, which is the next page. A couple of things I want to point out. So the final rule was actually delivered on April 1st, 2022. They did a lot of changes. So the first year that the funds were going out, really during that time, it was a lot of questions on what the money can, thank you, Kelly, what the money can and cannot be spent on. So the final rule, and Steve can get into this, but you guys have got into this already, it clarifies more uses for the funds. So there is a lot of questions what the money can and cannot be spent on. This actually went into further detail. So a following update to the final rule, the counties are allowed to spend up to $10 million of ARPA funds as lost revenue or calculated lost revenue. So the formula has a growth rate increasing from 4.1% to 5.2%. It also clarifies the uses of funds for capital projects. So a lot of money has been going into the Kankakee County Courthouse, broadband infrastructure, the projects going on down in Pembroke, a lot of money's gone into that, and recovery projects. It also streamlines options for local businesses, new businesses who started during the pandemic. Eligible funds are now for that. Broadens water and sewer projects, so that is another use now. Authorization of rehiring staff, and then all of the populations who were not really receive ARPA funds. So that's another thing. So we always wanted to point out that the main use of the COVID-19 funds was to support the public health response, really address negative and economic impacts. So that is updates to the law. Kankakee County, as you know, was allocated $21.3 million. The ARPA funding has been separated into two funds, the ARPA fund and the lost revenue fund. See if my clicker is working now. There it goes. For the new board members on the board, this is just to highlight some of the policies that were put in place to really make sure the money is being spent and allocated fairly. One thing I want to point out, third to the last bullet point, the overall can't say that word, policy is to encourage people to partner and coordinate. There's a lot of ARPA requests that have similar requests, so you'll see that in the social services, how you want to, partner and collaborate with those people to make sure that everyone is spending the money fairly. Okay, so approved applicants, this is just a table to highlight kind of some of the approved applicants that you guys approved in 2022. So Kankakee County Board approved and allocated, and this is as of March 7, 2023, $2,856,929 in the year of 2022. Now, I do want to point out all of the applicants completed a application. They had to submit supporting documentation, and they actually had to follow the U.S. Treasury's requirements. These are federal guidelines that the money has to follow. So I will highlight just the categories that's in the report. Non-covered governmental units, that's park districts, that's fire protection districts. So those are non-covered governmental units. Okay. As you can see, I'm not really good with this clicker up here. Okay, one thing I do want to point out that was new, kind of new this year. Kelly, can you go back a little bit for the education and youth programs? That's it, thank you. So one thing I want to point out there, this year, I don't know, well, you guys have noticed because you voted for it, but for the public, I want to point out there was actually more money that was going towards youth and education programs. So I'll just name a couple of those. Bishop McLemore, Kankakee Eastside Football League, Grace Christian Academy, River Valley Recreation Association is actually the lady that you see pictured here. That's going towards their Special Olympics program. They got a new floor in their rec center, which was really nice to visit. But I want to point that out because this is actually something new this year that's different from 2021. Okay, go back one more. And then really the last category is just local businesses and community partners. I didn't really separate them this time. They all kind of fall under the same category. Okay. So the next category, as changes in finances continue to be relevant with newer needs identified following the pandemic, we started to see applications that express newer needs. New changes came up, they needed new things, new problems came up that they were still facing after the pandemic. So 2022 applicants who previously applied, they were eligible to reapply again. So we put out press releases, we did some outreach, we did a lot of outreach actually for them to know about that, and they expressed gratitude to the board for not only helping them again, but also stating that even those smaller amounts may have paid a bill. Maybe they brought back a member who they had to let go during the pandemic. That member was able to come back. So county government operations, another category that I want to point out, estimated total of $2,092,620 was allocated for government operations. Now, one thing that I want the public to know is the local offices here and really all over the county, that now they're better serving the public. So they have a lot of upgrades, sheriff's office, a lot of upgrades in the Kankakee County Clerk, new voters machines, you guys just used that. And then also the new Kankakee County Animal Control Facility that's in the works right now. So one thing I want to point out in that last paragraph, lost revenue ARPA funding for these upgrades to enhance public services actually save the taxpayer local property tax dollars. And there's some pictures for the new animal control coming. Okay, so the graphs are pretty simple. We tried to keep it simple, so this would be understood well. So approved allocations by fund. Again, the ARPA funding is separated into two categories, two funds. So lost revenue and then COVID-19 response. This is actually the same as the 2021 report. And then we separated it by sector. So it breaks it down even further in that second graph. Now you can see the county government operations, nonprofits, small businesses, and then non-covered governmental units. Okay, almost done here. I'm getting a little better with the clicker as I go on. Okay, so Kankakee County new website. This is a really big project. So this was actually paid through the ARPA funds because during the shutdown, a lot of people expressed that they couldn't come into the offices, of course. So you want to make government, local government especially, more accessible. So there's actually clickable links in this report. When you guys actually visit this on the website, you'll be able to click on these links. But the idea here for the new website is just not more modern layout, but really just so your community can interface with you even easier online. So all of the services are really updated online. One service that's been working really well, people can now apply for a county job online. Okay. Kankakee County Community Needs Assessment. This was actually done in July. So the Kankakee County Board, in partnership with the City of Kankakee and Respark Consulting, launched this survey to really further identify the needs. Really, they wanted to get the public's input because of the money, you know, the public should have some input on that. So the public was encouraged to respond by completing this survey. It was conducted July 12th through July 31st, 2022. And then those results you can actually find on our Kankakee County's website. If you go to Our County, county announcement in Kankakee County News, you'll see those results. But the idea here was to identify local needs, local partnerships, local connections. How can we enhance those? How can we strengthen those? And then really target programming that's going to address those needs. Okay, so these are the results of the Kankakee County Community Needs Assessment. So the following were separated into the 5 areas for this survey: business and economic development, housing, mental health, law enforcement, and workforce development. Now, these are some of the responses that were received from the survey. 10% of respondents are currently looking for other jobs, while some face barriers related to skills, pay, and experience. 36% of respondents indicated their housing may be more insecure within the next 12 months. 34% to 47% of respondents reported negative mental health impacts within the last year. Many believe the services should be more accessible. And then 62% of respondents believe their communities would actually benefit from additional local law enforcement. Now, these findings again came from Respark, but this is from the survey. So now the next phase that you guys in actually addresses this. So hopefully you're following this timeline. So now you guys have those you have those survey results. Now it's going to go into these social services efforts. So following this community needs assessment, now the county released $2 million. So a notice of funding opportunity that was actually in December of 2022. So now you're going to target this effort. Applicants were approved as of March 14, 2023. You guys actually started voting on these already, so it's already moving forward. On the left-hand side, you'll see some of the applicants who were approved. So More Excellent Way Ministries, youth development programs, rental assistance program, food pantries, football leagues, youth education programs, mechanic programs. So you're seeing the different categories from that survey. So any questions about that, we could talk about that. But Kankakee County is seeking applicants really back then to address what you guys were pointing out during the survey. Okay, and that is all I have. So this 2022 report will actually be posted on the website today. It would actually be under COVID-19 ARPA resources. I personally want to thank Chairman Wheeler for your direction, your guidance, all of this for the report. And Steve, Director of Finance, I forgot your title, Steve. Director of Finance, for your help and your work. And then as of today, I will be starting a new chapter. So I would personally want to thank all of you and the board members for working along with you. So it's been great, and I'm really excited for the future here.
Well, and thank you for your work on all of this ARPA communications. It was successful in the deployment because of largely because people knew where to go and what to do, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's key. Wish you nothing but the best. We know you'll be successful. Any questions about whether it's layout, time, anything Jasmine said, any of the numbers? I will say Shoot Manufacturing might not be the best listing of the recipient. It was really Kankakee Township's road that was fixed. We didn't, even though the resolution said it wasn't for a for-profit manufacturer. It was for an economic development partnership, excuse me, to get that road fixed, so they can spend, oh heck, I think it was around $10 million so they can go out and hire more people to work there, which is kind of our role to help that happen if we can. So moving, any questions for Steve about the numbers? Thank you. Moving on. Proclamation declaring 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. I just read the title in the record.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you want to read the title?
I'm not splitting fees.
Okay, sorry. I won't do that again. He'll file a grievance on me. So is there a motion to declare April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month?
Polk.
Ms. Polk, a second. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Hendrickson, did you want to read that? Or actually, did we want to ask Mr. Miller if he wants to read this into the record?
I'll read this one, you read the next one. Actually,
okay.
All right, you got it.
Ready?
Yeah.
Proclamation supporting agriculture in Illinois and Kankakee County. Whereas Illinois is home to more than 7,100 farms, 96% of which are family owned. And whereas Kankakee County accounts for 756 of those farms, and whereas Illinois agriculture and related industries generate total sales or output is estimated at $2.39 billion. Whereas Kankakee County agriculture products are sold an annual market of over 221 million. Whereas Kankakee County has a total of 432,977 acres, with approximately 72% of Kankakee County being farmland. Whereas Kankakee County farm property provides 10.5% of taxable value, with Kankakee County farms paying nearly $5.5 million in property taxes annually, providing services to residents. And whereas Kankakee County agriculture supports 8,370 jobs, which accounts for an estimated 15% of total jobs in Kankakee County. Specifically, Kankakee County farms pay over $14 million annually to hired farm labor. And whereas Kankakee County ranks 27th in geographic size out of the state of Illinois' 102 counties, but makes the top 10 list in several categories showcasing Kankakee County's diverse agriculture production. And whereas Kankakee County ranks first in the state in other crops and hay, which includes field-grown herbs, Kankakee County ranks second in the state in specialty crop production, which includes vegetables, melons, and potatoes. Kankakee County ranks 6th in the state in nursery, greenhouse, floriculture, and sod production. Kankakee County ranks 8th in the state for poultry and egg production. Whereas Kankakee County has some of the most extensive use of irrigation in Illinois, ranking 9th in the state for number of acres of irrigated farmland. The top counties from highest to lowest are Mason, Whiteside, Gallatin, Tazewell, Lawrence, Cass, White, and Lee. And whereas Illinois farmers support the food security of our citizens, the international pandemic displayed the importance of American food systems, processing, and supply chain weaknesses. And whereas farmers are dedicated to caring for their animals in ways that also benefit the land, using tools and technology to better manage all soil nutrients, water runoff, and air quality on the farm, farmers are using fewer natural resources and reducing their carbon footprint while producing more food. And while as farmland is a finite resource that is vital to agriculture, food production, and the economic well-being of Kankakee County. And whereas farmers in Illinois face multiple layers of regulation involving state and federal agencies providing a comprehensive, robust regulatory program for all farms, including those raising livestock. And whereas data and information from state regulatory agencies demonstrates environmental issues from agriculture are an extremely rare occurrence. And whereas the Planning, Zoning, and Agriculture Committee at its regularly scheduled and duly noticed meeting of March 22nd, 2023, has recognized the value of agriculture contributes to our county and the rural way of life is the backbone of our country. Efforts should be made to accommodate future success of the rural community. And whereas Kankakee County Board recognizes the value agriculture contributes to our county and the rural way of life is the backbone of our country, efforts should be made to accommodate future successes of the rural community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Kankakee County Board at this regularly scheduled meeting of April 11th, 2023 acknowledges and supports the vibrant and diverse agriculture within Kankakee County, the jobs created, taxes generated, technologies embraced, and environmental practices implemented by farmers makes agriculture a valuable industry within Kankakee County. Let it be resolved the Kankakee County Elected Board and County staff will work to support and promote the development of agriculture for the benefit of Kankakee County and all its residents.
Thanks, Dan. That was verbose, but I thought it was necessary because it's that important to actually, those words need to be heard because so many times we take that for granted because you just show up at a grocery store and it's on your plate. So is there a motion to approve that, Mr. Long? Mr. Tholen with a second. Is there any comments by the group? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you very much. You know, I actually read the resolution, and I don't know the word you used, verbose. I thought it was adequate in terms of the information that's provided. I think probably all the county board members probably need to file this information away regarding our county in terms of the role that agriculture plays in our local economy. And to the author and you for pulling this information together, kudos to you. Invaluable information.
Kudos. Got one. Is there we had a motion second, correct? Yep. Yes, we have one there. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, buckle up. We're going to try to get through this. We got a few things to do here. Certificates of appreciation had 10 years for Katie Bukowski out at the Sheriff's Department. She fights medical bills like nobody you've ever seen in your life, and she's good at it. She saves us money. Carrie Stewart, 15 years at the State's Attorney's Office.
She, I would love for her to be here. I'm going to have her come to the next county board meeting. She is at a training this week, so she's out of the office. So can we put it back on the, what would it be, the May agenda? Thank you.
Kelly said no.
She said no.
Can't happen. Can't happen.
I apologize, but I'm going to have Mr. Coughlin come up. I have to be somewhere at 11 a.m. I didn't know my part would take so long. I apologize. Between my part and your resolution.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But for while the changing of the guard is going on here, the minutes of the last meeting, March 14th, 2023. Motion, Ms. Parker to approve. Second. Mr. Eckhoff, both Ms. Turner actually with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Claims Committee reports.
Mr. Chairman, members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims and beg leave to report they've examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. Clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants. Total claims of $11,363,909.71.
Motion to approve on the claims. Mr. Eckhoff, Dr. Polk with a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Rittman-Akemi.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Turner.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, we can get all those kind of read into the record.
County Collector's Monthly Report for February, total cash and bank and investments, $1,305,886.10. Treasurer's Monthly Report for month ending February 2023, ending balance at the tax operating account, First American Bank, $1,207,664.44. At the tax collection account at First American Bank, the ending balance is $337.85. The tax e-pay account at First American Bank, the ending balance is $97,883.81. The Coroner's Monthly Report for February 2023, total calls 94, coroner's cases 10, 3 autopsies, 4 toxicology, 1 donation, 1 fetal, 53 hospice, 29 referrals, 51 cremations, 1 x-ray, 1 COVID-19, 2 pending. The Coroner's Income Summary Report for February 2023, total of $4,330.34. Circuit Clerk Cash Book for month ending February 2023, total disbursed of $296,065.57. Recorder's Monthly Report for February 2023, disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer, $95,836.04. County Clerk Monthly Report for February 2023, total of $36,150.74. Monthly Building Division Report for February 2023, total permits 36, total fees $28,803. Animal Control Monthly Report for February 2023, total of $38,223.75. In the IPTIP Building Fund, $233.96. Total animals handled 64. Monthly resolution list for April 2023, total of the county of $1,428. And the Regional Office of Education's quarterly report is on file.
Is there a motion to combine and approve? Mr. Long, second. Mr. Ashcraft. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under consent, is there anything that needs to come off and be considered separately? Second time. Anything that needs to come off? Alrighty then, a motion to combine and approve would be in order. Mr. Ashcraft, a second. Sorry, Ms. Rittman-Akemi. If we get those read in the record, please. Thank you.
The appointment of Christopher Clark to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. The reappointment of Mike Rubel to the Kankakee River Conservancy District. The reappointment of Douglas Gray to the Farmland Assessment Review Committee. The reappointment of Randy O. Langloy to the Kankakee Valley Airport Authority. The reappointment of Gregory Outson to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. The reappointment of David Tyson to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. The reappointment of Jeff Jarvis to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. The reappointment of William Warburton to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. The reappointment of Bob Bedell to the Kankakee County Board of Examiners and Appeals. Agreement to approve decommissioning plan and bond in the amount of $299,257 for the St. Solar 1 LLC solar farm project. Agreement to approve decommissioning plan and bond in the amount of $281,956 for the St. Solar 2 LLC solar farm project. Agreement to approve decommissioning plan and bond in the amount of $277,121 for the GAR Solar LLC solar farm project. Transportation grant agreement between the state of Illinois and Kankakee County for fiscal year 2024 concurring resolution. Amending ARPA resolution, Scrivener's error on fiscal year.
All righty. We need a roll call, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Rittman-McEmmy.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Turner. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, PZA. If we could get the title read in the record, and then Dell will, on number 99, then he'll run through it.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding amendment to Chapter 105, Buildings and Building Regulations, Section 105-67C, and notice of intent.
Is there a motion to approve on this one to start with? Mr. Hunter, a second. Mr. Smith. All righty.
Okay. This is a change to the text of Chapter 105 in anticipation of the County Board approving the new renewable energy ordinance for zoning. Having talked to several board members, the new zoning regulations will no longer require a special use permit, which means no public hearing and no option for adjoining property owners to be notified of what's happening around them. By changing Chapter 105 and requiring a notice of intent for large capital projects, this would require any capital project that is valued at more than $2 million on a undeveloped property consisting of 15 acres or more to have to give notice to all adjoining property owners and to any municipality within 1.5 miles and the township supervisor for the township in which they are located. And this would apply to all capital projects, regardless of the type.
And so the thought is that we can use our alert system on the county's website for people to put in terms like wind, solar, and they'll get an email when something hits our website that pertains to that.
Yeah.
So it's if people want to be notified in their area of things going on in certain areas, it could be whatever, it could be river, it could be whatever term it is, they can get emails saying something was added to the county's website in this regard. And so we were thinking of using this as a substitute for what people would find out in a open public meeting that is not necessarily required by the new law in Springfield or state of Illinois.
And that's why this does not just apply to solar farms. It applies to all capital projects. It would be direct mailing by certified mail to those that I mentioned. Everyone else, the notify me part of our Kankakee County website would have an item added to it to be notified on renewable energy or capital projects. And anytime we got a notice of intent, we will place it on that, which will be distributed out to anybody who signed up.
Any questions? It's more informational just so we can get it out there regardless. We don't, as soon as we know, we want others to know. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Mr. Snipes?
So we're amending 105 to adapt to a new law through the state of Illinois?
We are amending Chapter 105 to allow notice to adjoining property owners. The main reason is because of a change in the zoning law. Chapter 105 is the building code.
Okay, well, so I was looking at the 105. So, so is that something that's in our local code, or was it something in the state that that prompted the change?
Chapter 105 is our local building code.
Right, so we're changing it not to inform everybody. We're getting away from the meetings that we generally have to just sending them a letter of intent. How, if they have concerns, how's the meeting? What's the process as far as having a meeting so that they will have some input or say?
Okay, I apologize for the order in which this is on here. We probably should have done the zoning code first. Okay. Because of the changes in the zoning code, there will be no meeting. Renewable energy facilities will simply apply for their building permit, and my staff will have to make sure that they meet the requirements of the state statute. So there is no meeting.
Where in the past it was a meeting.
In the past there was a special use permit, there was a public hearing, there was a meeting. Anybody with any concerns could come to that meeting. No special use permit anymore, no public hearing. Changed by the state law, yes, thank you, Mr.
Change, that's what I was getting at, okay.
So this is our attempt to at least keep our citizens informed. Yes.
Alrighty, I guess all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay?
Nay.
Mr. Snipes was a nay. We'd like to not keep people informed. All right, moving on to the next one. We get the title read in the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 23-03, rezoning from A1 Agriculture District to C2 General Commercial District and C2 General Commercial District to A1 Agriculture District in Section 2 of Otto Township.
All right, start with a motion on this one. Someone, Mr. Eckhoff, second. Mr. Scanlon. Tom?
Okay. This is a request for rezoning. It's a little complicated, but kind of straightforward. Back in 1986, Shabant's Ag and the owners, Schaefer Farms Incorporated, owned the 80-acre parcel, and they still do. It was an 80-acre parcel at the time that is the larger outline square. At that time, they rezoned the entire frontage, about 330 feet back, to C2 commercial. They built their facility on the southern portion of that C2 commercial and have not built anything on the northern portion of it. And about 2 years ago, they redivided the land into a 20-acre that you see in the smaller square and a 60-acre, which is the larger kind of L-shaped polygon. What they're requesting today is to make the entire 20-acre C2 commercial and the entirety of the 60-acre agriculture. So it's really just swapping the same acreage to a different location so that they can better plan their facility and make it more efficient. Zoning board agreed with them 4-0 to approve, and planning and zoning committee concurred. There were no objectors.
Any questions? Anyone? All right, we have a motion and a second. I guess all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding ZBA case 23-02, text amendment to County Code Sections 121-3, 121-99, 121-146, 121-208, 121-209, 121-195, and 121-297 for renewable energy facilities.
Just a point of clarification, you meant 295, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's 295 on the agenda and 195 on the resolution.
So which is it?
I don't know.
While he's doing that, can I get a motion to approve on this one? Mr. Long, second. Mr. Ashcraft, thank you.
I have 295.
Okay. $295. You're following the home.
Yes, it is definitely 295.
295.
Were we ready? Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're on.
I'm sorry. Okay, I don't know how in depth you want me to go. It's about 9 or 10 pages.
I think maybe kick it off with why we're doing this,
do
what
the
this
highlights.
is, and if people have, they could watch PZA. Because
Yes,
we went
and-
through it, that's why we record the meetings.
And the entirety of it is in your packet. Back on January 27th, the state legislature passed Public Act 102 1123, which came out of House Bill 4412, that pretty much changed the way counties can administer zoning when it comes to solar farms and wind farms. And because of that act, they set up the requirements that a renewable energy facility must meet in order to be approved, and it states that if it meets that approval, or if it meets those requirements, the county board must approve the site, really taking away this board's ability to question, object, or do anything but approve them if they meet those requirements. It also gave us 120 days excuse me, to make our ordinance compliant with that public act. And that's what this is here before you today. We have the rules and definitions, and those mirror the rules and definitions in the state statutes. Identical. They're identical.
Drainage districts and stuff.
Okay. So, it changes our agricultural district, our single-family residential district, and our industrial districts. The state statute says that we must allow these facilities in any district that we allow agricultural use, industrial use, or industrial use. Since we allow agricultural use in the single-family residential district on parcels of 20 acres or more, we also had to include that. Okay? Because the statute states that the county board must approve them if they meet the requirements, we chose to make them permitted uses in these districts and not special use permits, because the only thing the special use permit would have done would be require a public hearing that no one could do anything about anyway. Our findings of fact, the county standards don't matter. They just must meet the standards of the state.
So we'd be spending thousands for stenographers and to hold meetings times what, 50, 60 we did the first year? I mean,
yes, about 52 the first year.
They're going to start coming again because they're all waiting right now. So it's a financial decision. If we have a workaround to let the public know something is coming, that's what the first thing was. So we're not abandoning the public. We're still going to do everything we can to let them know, but they have to let us know that they want to know. Right. We'll put it on the website. We'll bring it to the committee meetings if we get a notice of intent for any of the big projects. But just so you know.
So, I mean, we are all for the public being informed, and we want to hear what they have to say. It just did not make sense to go through that expense when there was absolutely nothing we could do about it. And we looked for other avenues, and that's why we had the notice of intent.
Mr. Hunter, do you have a question about what he already said?
And probably, Del, directed towards you or Chad, are there any pending trailer bills on this stuff at all? Because I know, I had some discussions with Senator Joyce, and I think I may have even mentioned something to Jackie, Representative Haas, about this stuff, about our hands being tied and our oversight has been substantially taken away. So any comments at all regarding trailer bills?
There are two that I'm aware of. One was a shell bill, though it had no content to it. And the other one does have content, and it's mostly centered around issues with drainage.
The drainage districts, yeah.
Yes, it gives the drainage districts back a little more power. I'll get to that on this, about what they took away from them. And it does require a drainage study of not only that property, but the surrounding properties is another requirement that would have to be submitted to my staff. That's if that passes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so what it did, it changed all of our setbacks. We used to have setbacks on solar farms of 100 feet from the roads, 100 feet from any property line that had a residential home on it. Now it's 50 feet. So it changed all the setbacks. And if you can get an agreement with that neighbor, the setback's 0. If you have a written agreement with your neighbor or a neighboring property, the setback can be 0 on these. Same thing with the wind. Wind is 2.1 times the height of the tower. There is no limit on the tower height. That is determined by a letter of no conflict from the Federal Aviation. So each one, we'll have to wait till we get the letter to determine how high they can be on each individual tower. Give you some more highlights.
0.1 times the height.
I thought it was 2.1, it could be 1.1. It's 1.1 times the height for some of them. Let me pull up that page. Depends on what you're setting back from.
I just got one of those today in the mail for, I think it was Dwight. The FAA permitted height setbacks in Dwight. They might. Without a fight.
That's right.
It's no slight.
How you feeling?
I think that's her correct.
Designed right there, there we go. As far as setbacks go, 1.1 times the height from nearest point on a property line of a non-participating property, so it's 1.1. 2.1 outside wall of any non-participating residence. So if your home is close to the line, it could be 2.1 times the height. 2.1 from any nature preserve or protected lands. 1.1 from any right-of-way containing overhead communication or electric transmission lines. 2.1 from any occupied community building. And 1.1 from any public right-of-way. Power lines and overhead utility lines on property do not have a setback. They have 0 setback from any on property. Some of the requirements, and these are pretty much the same for solar and wind. The only difference we have there is a road use agreement for wind, but not for solar anymore. But they must have an executed agricultural impact mitigation agreement, the determination of no issues for the FAA, a report indicating sound limitations that comply with Illinois Pollution Control Board, a decommissioning plan and surety bond. Now, we also can require a decommissioning plan and surety bond, but it must be the same and identical to what the AMA has in it. And we can no longer require that they ignore recycle value. So we always ask for the full amount regardless of recycling. Now they can deduct the recycling from the amount. And that's the same for both. They must consult with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service and follow their wind energy guidelines or solar energy guidelines, depending on the case. They must do an EcoCat and give that to us, which is it's an environmental report from the Department of Natural Resources. They must show us evidence that they consulted with the State Historic Preservation Office. And as I said before, for wind, they need a road use agreement. So if they meet those requirements and my staff reviews it and all those requirements are met and they get their review for their structural and their and any land or dirt moving that they're doing, then we would issue the building permit.
Chairman Wheeler.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the natural resources inventory report would no longer be required if there's no request for a variance or request for rezoning?
That's correct. It's not listed in that statute.
Okay.
Anywhere.
I would still like to know through a natural resources inventory report what sort of farmland we're losing through these developments.
As would I, but we can't require it.
Wow. That's state law.
We cannot require anything that is not listed as a requirement in that statute, which conflicts with the laws pertaining to natural resource inventory reports.
We're changing the public notice procedure. I wonder if we could change the NRI procedure, being that the cost of the NRI is on the developer and provides our county a lot of useful information.
Legal would have to look into that, but that's, I mean, that's a big jump from notice. Okay.
Got it.
It's a big jump from requiring notice.
Thank you.
Okay. Vegetative ground cover, none required for wind, but solar. We can require that they have vegetative ground cover and that they have screening around the facility. Now, the maintenance of that, though, is would be pursuant to a plan from the Department of Natural Resources that they must follow. Not any rules that we would establish. I have not seen one of those plans, so I couldn't tell you exactly what is in them. They had 90 days to come up with what that plan would be.
But we enforce.
Presumably, yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like that, yeah. And then, you know, are we able to establish fines based on it not being in the state law? What's our remedy? You know, those are questions I guess we'll cross that bridge.
I think we could, but it would be our standard property maintenance fines and fees. So. Yeah. One of the big things that they did here, and that's one of the trailer bills tries to fix that, is they took a lot of power away from the drainage districts. It gives these operators the right to cross any drainage district line as long as they fix any damage that they do within a reasonable amount of time, and they do not need any pre-approval to do so. I do not know what reasonable means here, and they can just plow right through. That's pretty much it in a bit broad overview. If anybody has any specific questions, maybe it'd be easier.
Mr. Miller, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's unfortunate that the state legislature passed this law and gave us 120 days in order to conform, with the idea that there are trailer bills that will change this again and will probably give us another 120 days to make changes to those laws. It should be noted that Senator Patrick Joyce and Representative Jackie Haas did not support this legislation. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, we got a motion in a second, right? So we have a motion in a second. However you feel about it, you know, we're complying with the state law to do so. So motion in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Mr. Snipes voted nay. Make sure you got that. All right, next one.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding DCEO line item appropriations, intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the County of Kankakee, Illinois, and various agencies.
To start with, can I get a motion on this one to get it moving? Mr. Long, second. Go with Mrs. Weber. Welcome back, by the way. Do you have a brief explanation for Ben?
Yes, unfortunately Ben has been handling this for me and he could not be here today. Various townships and municipalities in our county and a few just outside of our county have been appropriated various sums of money ranging from about $50,000 to $150,000. And we are asking to be the fiscal agent on these grants or appropriations. And what we're asking for today, we do not have all the intergovernmental agreements yet. We're asking for the chairman to have permission to sign these agreements as they become.
Our legislators got these appropriations. They're funneling them all through the county. We're just pass through for no fee, and just passing them through because these small towns like Buckingham and Reddick, they don't have the infrastructure to manage these grants. So we're going to do it for them. It's a way to help them out.
Yeah. So. Union Hill, Herscher, Reddick, Essex, Shabance Township.
Yep, so we got a motion here, Mr. Scanlon, second. We'll go with Ms. Foster on this one. She hasn't had one today yet, I don't think.
Had a motion in a second.
Huh?
You already had
We had a motion in a second this time already? Okay, I'm sorry, we had that. We'll get you next time. We better do roll call. They may consider that spending money if we pass it through.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. McEmmy.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Ms. Turner. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Alrighty, the next item, please, just the title.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding approval to select and enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Kankakee County and Prairie Engineers for a hydrographic bathymetric project.
Alrighty, let's go with the motion on this first. Mr. Long, you're on GIS, so you've been experienced with that. Mr. Tholen with a second. Del, if you could tee it up real quick.
Sure. The GIS committee determined almost a year ago that bathymetrics of both the Kankakee and Iroquois River would be their next project to take on. So back, I guess, around November, we went to a RFP to solicit vendors to perform that type of work. We got one response, which was Prairie Engineers. And they gave us their proposal. Mr. Scott Perkins from Prairie Engineers is here to give a presentation on what they intend to do, if that is all right with the board.
Yeah, if we can, we try to keep it, just to the basics if we could.
I think it's about 7 or 8 slides.
7 or 8 slides, okay.
But basically, they would.
This is a big deal. I want to shortchange this. This is a big deal. Us doing
They will be surveying the entirety of both rivers, about a quarter mile into our surrounding counties, because we don't want to stop right on the county line, and we can add Singleton Ditch for about $7,000. You had asked for that at PZA.
Yeah.
About $7,000.
Can we include that with the motion? Singleton's important for us to take a look at. It's a major sediment load and drainage load that goes into the river. The worst before you get to the confluence. It actually drains more land than the Kankakee does, I believe. At times it goes backwards up to Indiana. Yeah, it's bad.
Well, good morning. Thank you. Just a quick look. Prairie Engineers is a local Illinois firm, woman-owned small business headquartered in Columbia, Illinois, with 5 offices in the state of Illinois, 2 in Missouri, 1 in Mississippi. So just a quick look at our office locations and distribution of our staff. We are both licensed engineers and licensed land surveyors. Flow chart showing who will be working on your project. I personally will be in charge of the quality of the project. I'm the quality manager. Staff resumes were provided to the GIS department and to the planning and zoning at our last meeting. Here's a look at the equipment we'll be using. So we have a variety of different size vessels. So we have enclosed cabin boats, we have open hold boats, we have remote controlled surface boats. And if needed, we can put the waders on and get in the stream and measure it the old-fashioned way. Fundamentals of how we do this: we have GPS positioning on the boat, we have inertial monitoring on the boat that keeps track of the wave motion, any tipping, rocking of the boat. Those compensations are important so that we get accurate measurements. We use sonar. So sonar gets emitted from the bottom of the boat, hits the bottom of the river, bounces back up, and we measure the time difference. It takes those signals to go from the boat to the bottom and back up. Here's a look at one of our larger vessels, medium-sized vessel, open hold, jet drive boat. This is the one we use in the shallow areas, so it has propulsion similar to a jet ski. It doesn't have a propeller underneath it. Shoots a stream of water so we can get it in very shallow water. The remote controlled boat for places where we can't get a boat into, but we can launch it from shore. And then the good old-fashioned way, surveyors with waders. This is a look at what the end result is. So you get a depth map showing the depths to the bottom of the river, color-coded by elevation. So blue is deep, green is shallow, red is a hazard. collect both single beam and dual frequency sonar. So 2 different frequencies, a low frequency, a high frequency, and that gives us the ability to assess the depth of unconsolidated material in the bottom of the river, or what you and I might call mud, right? At the end of the day, we're going to be able to estimate the volume of mud sitting on top of the bottom of the river that potentially could be removed or through dredging. We use 2 different technologies, single beam and multi-beam. Single beam is a narrow, strong beam right underneath the boat. Multi-beam is a wide swath that goes covering a wider area. Multi-beam is more effective in deep water. It loses its effectiveness in shallow water. Quick look at the workflow. Did site recon a month and a half ago. So we identified the hazards, where the log jams are, anything that could pose a safety risk. We proposed doing a pilot project near the confluence of the Kankakee and the Iroquois River. We're going to use both technologies, single beam and multi-beam, in the pilot project, and then let the county staff and your consultants assess that data and make the best determination on which they think will be most useful. There are 2 different price points depending on which technology is chosen. Basic timeline, so from start to finish, we can complete this project within 12 weeks, and we are ready to mobilize within 10 days from notice to proceed. At the end of the day, another look at what the end result will be, a chart similar to what Army Corps uses for navigation on the major maritime rivers, color-coded by elevation, and will be both useful for recreation and safety of navigation. Another look at the chart. And with that, we thank you for your consideration of the proposal. Answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Long. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having participated in the original GIS mapping for this county, this is a project where we don't know what we don't know yet. We know what the face of the county looks because of the GIS. We do not know what the bottom of the Kankakee River looks like. Kankakee River is one of our most important assets besides the agricultural ability of this county for recreation and for providing water to many, many communities. This project, again, we don't know what we don't know yet. There's a lot of things that we'll figure out in the future that it'll be beneficial for, but right away the mapping is going to help us in the projects we've already got started in Aroma Park. Thank you. Mr. Dell?
I could follow up on that for just a second. That's because we don't know exactly the makeup of the river, that's why we're doing the pilot project, and that's why we're asking for a amount not to exceed, which is the high end, be 196 with Singleton Ditch at this point.
Okay, 196 pilot project.
Well, 196 would be the not to exceed for the total cost of the project. That would be the high end.
Okay, everything.
And we would be able to determine exactly where low end's about 122.
Okay.
We're going to be somewhere in the middle of that, depending on what the pilot project reveals.
I will say that for your consideration, as you look back on the stack of river stuff that we have as far as the studies that have been done, it's really interesting to go back and look at the 50s and 60s and 70s on what islands were where and where they're at now. So as we start to address sedimentation and rebuilding shoreline and things like that, this is essential data to see if what we're doing is working or if we're targeting the right areas. So this could not be coming at a better time of providing that. We're going to be working on this for 30, 40 years on the river. So this is the foundational, it's almost like LIDAR for the bottom of the river, basically. It's our baseline. It's what are you looking at in greater detail than we've ever seen before. So, and then we'll be able to watch it evolve. We'll do it again in 10 years. Well, that's no contract on that, by the way, but yeah, just saying it would be good to take a look in 10 years. What has happened? It'll tell us if what Indiana's doing is working, because if we're going to do it at the state line, we want to see some impact there as well. So I'm thrilled with this, and it was just, I want to say, not dumb luck. It was time to do this, and it actually, we moved on it. So any other thoughts on this? Mr. Hunter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I know it essentially deals with mapping and so forth. What about environmental issues and endangered species, mussels, and so forth. Will it identify some of those vicissitudes or issues?
What we're doing is the surveying to the depth of the mud and then the thickness of the mud. So there is no
environmental issue.
Yep.
Okay. So what entity would address that in terms of any environmental issues in terms of the mussels and so forth?
I would.
That's actually in another document.
Department of Natural Resources.
DNR. Okay,
Yes,
I
DNR.
figured as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Before you do any work, you usually have to consult with them about mussels and endangered species.
Any potential prohibitions, yeah.
This data should be very useful for the DNR if they were to do a mussel survey, species, census.
The other thing it's useful for are the people that are out there on their boats. They're going to be able to scan a QR code, like if we put it on a sign, and that'll give us a snapshot of where the river was at that point. Now, we can't guarantee where it is today, but we'll have from a date certain, we'll have a look of the bottom of the river, and it should be a good indication of where you should be going and where you shouldn't be going. Now, that's an immediate benefit to the people that use the river. Right there on your phone through GIS maps. So, any other questions? Probably need a roll call vote on this, I would imagine. Okay.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster. Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Rittman-McEmmey.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries.
Quite a mouthful.
Thank you. Exciting stuff. Alrighty, moving on to highways and waterways, if we can get that one.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding amending Resolution 2022-08-09-145 for Aroma Park Boat Launch Dredge Design.
Right, is there a motion to approve this to start with? Ms. Parker, Mr. Smith with a second. Basically, we had some updates on pricing and the expanded nature of the mussel study that has to go upriver, basically to Ryan's Pier. I'm told by a lot of the locals that mussels don't like the sand where we're at right now. They love the rocky terrain that's well north of upstream, if you will, of the pier, but we still got to do the study. And so we'll talk about the new timeline in highways and waterways, but there you have the agreement there that allows us to adjust that pricing model to pay for the study. So really it has to be done. It's part of the process, part of the permitting process by DNR. And there's consultants on there that do that as well. Any other questions on that? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Rittman-McEmmey.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under finance, if we could get the first one read in the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding property tax abatement for tax year 2022 payable 2023 to be abated in its entirety. Series 2022 General Obligation Bond.
Is there a motion to abate these? Mr. Hunter, Mr. Long with a second. This is just us following through on abating the animal control building bond. So again, the local property taxpayers are not paying for that building. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Rittman-McEmmey.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Did we, this is amending the resolution. Oh, this is the budget one. I'm sorry, it didn't go up to consent. If we can get that read in the record, please, I apologize.
Amendments to the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for Kankakee County, Illinois, 2021-22 fiscal year.
Is there a motion to approve correcting this? Mr. Eckhoff, second. Mr. Long, any questions about the Scrivener's error? We talked about it in finance. Better roll call that, just in case.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Ripmanick-Emmy.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. And 106, please, if we get that read, title read.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman or his designee to sign the intergovernmental agreement on behalf of the Kankakee County Sheriff's Department with Illinois Department of Children and Family Services.
All right, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Hunter, second. Ms. Monday. Basically, way to say this, but we're riding shotgun with DCFS on their house visits now because of the assaults that have been happening, so we're being compensated for it. This is the agreement that allows that. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms. Ripmanick-Emmy.
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under ARPA funding request, any of those under ARPA or lost revenue, the next group, all the way through 117, has any one of those got to come off and be considered separately? Yes, sir.
I really don't have to consider separately. I just wanted to make sure that the revenue that they're saying is a lost revenue is being returned because they have not utilized it, like Lax Mortuary. I remember when we approved it. So it looks like they since they haven't used it, it's being returned to the coffers.
Yeah, it's being unappropriated, if you will,
Right.
back into the
Okay.
general mix of the money.
Okay.
Hold on just a second here, I'm reading something. Actually, I need that to stop at 113. We have to talk about a couple of those under consent because it should have been on there. I apologize. So can the motion be all the way through 113? I do have to say some things on the record regarding the other ones. Is that acceptable? Okay. All right, we just had the one with the one question. Roll call vote, please, all the way through 113. Oh, we got to get them right into the record.
Well, we got a motion in a second as well.
I thought we had it.
Nope.
Nope. Is there a motion a second on that up through 113, Mr. Poland? Dr. Pope, the second. If we can get them read in just to 113. Thank you.
Authorizing expenditure from fiscal year 2023 Fund 95 America Rescue Plan Fund for the following: Kankakee County Fire Chiefs Association, Catholic Charities, Josh's Pizza, doing business as Johnny's Pizza, Option Center for Individual Living, Bishop McNamara High School Football, Driven by Ambition, and out of the Lost Revenue Fund, Kankakee County Animal Control Building.
All righty. Sorry about that. Any questions about any of those? Roll call vote then, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker. Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade.
Aye.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Aye.
Ms. Monday.
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Ripmanick-Emmy. Mr. Scanlon.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Really briefly, 114 through 117 is based on this couple of slides on the PowerPoint. We went through this in finance, but I thought it was important to say it again. On the 11th of May, the federal government and the state government has determined that's the end of the COVID health emergency. So the funding for tax years of 19 and 20, we based our 20 and 20 or 21 and 22. All that should be concluded because those taxes were filed last year. Any of the audits that we based the awards on for this part of our program were done a year ago. So the time is to shut that off, because when the government says response is over, we have to justify a certain way with the Department of Treasury. So we're turning this part off and pushing all that money back into the kitty. Doesn't mean we're not going to give it out again. It means that it's going back into the kitty, and we're either going to have another round of social services. They'll be used for other projects, because some things were unclaimed, other things were never used internally. So we'll run through those in a minute. So we also have to gather all the applicable unspent reserved allocations, return them, as I mentioned, then reallocate them by 12/31 of 2024. That's when we have to reallocate, and then spend by 26. So the total, the 2 million in social service grants are not part of this. That's a different timeline. So on the next slide, what the motion needs to be is that it's to combine and approve all of these next things that we're going to talk about. We're ending phase 1 on April 19th at 4 p.m., which allows us to be able to get more applications in between now and then. Okay, we're able to move forward and get more applications. That's the key. And then by May 9th full board meeting, we'll be able to approve that last wave, if you will. Vote to intern those, the staff and all of that stuff. We're doing that now as documented by the next resolutions. And then we authorize the finance staff to move all the unclaimed funds back to the big kitty of money by 4/31/24, so we have some months to redetermine where we want those funds to go. We didn't want that to be on the last day of the budget year, and then you're scrambling, okay, what are we gonna do? We wanna be strategic in what we do, and so that should give us enough runway internally to figure out what we're gonna do in that last push. So again, all funds must be allocated by 12/30/24. So this gives us that runway. Is there any questions about this? We really talked through it. It's more housekeeping and then prepping for this next big push that we're looking at, which is, we're going to revitalize the community, and we're going to really build up some infrastructure within county and other governmental units and connections between us. So any other thoughts on that? So the motion would be to include all of these, which is 114 through 117. The county maintenance department, the mail machine was supposed to go to ARPA. It was charged to a different department. We're going to leave it in there, so we're going to void out that resolution. Lax Mortuary did not come and claim their award. And then the, let's see here, there was one other one I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, legal counsel for us, we did not need that, so that's 140,000. That's going back over into the kitty as well. So if there is a motion, that would be to encapsulate all of that. Mr. Eckhoff? Okay, second on that. We'll go with Mrs. Weber on that one. We did, question? That was not a second.
It's a second.
Okay, all right, sorry.
So on the sheet of agenda, it shows a 113 and 114, and then it skips down to 115. So the one about the move unclaimed funds, April 31, what number is it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's mentioned in the resolution of the other ones.
Of the other ones.
It's in the verbiage of the other resolution. Because they didn't require a resolution on their own.
Gotcha.
So we just included that verbiage within that.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Roll call vote.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mr. Tholen.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Andrade. Ms. Andrade?
Nope, she's gone.
Okay. Mr. Ashcraft?
Aye.
Ms. Monday?
Aye.
Ms. Ripmanick-Emmy?
Aye.
Mr. Scanlon?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye. Motion carries. And we have a few openings.
One opening on the McGilvery Special Drainage District, one opening on the Kankakee County Convention and Visitors Bureau, one opening on the Kankakee River Valley Forest Preserve District Board, one opening on the U of I University of Illinois Extension, one opening on the Cabery Area Fire Protection District, one opening on the Essex Township Fire Protection District, one opening on the Grant Park Fire Protection District, one opening on the Greater Momence Fire Protection District, one opening on the Limestone Fire Protection District, one opening on the Mantino Community Fire Protection District, one opening on the Otto Township Fire Protection District, one opening on the St. Anne Fire Protection District, two openings on the Bourbonnais Fire Protection District, two openings on the Kankakee County Board of Review, and 5 openings on the Kankakee County Ethics Commission.
Thank you, sir. Any new business, Mr. Eckhoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question underneath finance. We gave the sheriff the okay to purchase vehicles. Does that have to be a full board vote, or?
No, he didn't have the price or anything yet.
Okay.
He just put them on order. And then once he figures out how many he's going to take, if they ever show up, he'll bring them back.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other new business? I had one piece of old business to remind or to at least share some information. As I left here last month, I had a conversation with Dan regarding Robert's Rules of Order. As we thought and as we researched, there's only one motion that interrupts the speaker, and that's point of personal privilege. So point of order, point of all of that stuff. Point of personal privileges gives you the right to actually interrupt the speaker. You know, it's too hot in here, I can't hear, you know, whatever, you know, whatever that personal privilege is, that's the only one that's interruptible. So we should not interrupt speakers going forward. Does that make sense? Okay. Mr. Hunter, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
What about motion to table?
You have to attain the floor. You cannot interrupt the speaker, but you can make that motion. You can't interrupt the speaker. Is that an accurate assessment of our conversation, what we found?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, Ms. Monday.
The words we use are point of personal preference?
Privilege.
Privilege. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And then the floor is relinquished after that. So that once there's a point of personal privilege, then the floor is relinquished after that point. Is there any other questions about that? Any other old business? Oh, Ms.
Is there
Monday.
any timeline on that, when someone can call point of personal privilege, or can it happen after like
Anytime.
2 or 3 minutes of rhetoric? We can.
Well, if you have a privilege that needs to be made a point of, that's
Thank
about
you.
the best way to put it.
Thank you. I will. Thanks.
Mr. Hess, did you have something?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Mr. Snipes had his hand up for something first.
Okay. Before I do the, are we still doing the bid opening for the courthouse furniture? Did we move that up? We moved that up, that's what I thought, okay. Just wanted to make about 4 comments and then I'm done. I heard the public comments, and while I applaud the response of Mr. Pace, I stand firm by my decision that the monies that I will approve going to East Side or anything that deals with our youth will be only to offset, and I will continue to say that, the fees of the players and their families that are economically disadvantaged or limited. So in essence, youth being non-participation to play because of economic liabilities, I'm thinking that if you're going to collect the money, then we need to do that because the voices of your parents or the participant parents have cried out in that area. So at some point in time, until I start hearing that some of these fees have been offset, when I looked at the Kankakee East Side Junior Football and you gave it to us cheerleader fees, $225, but in that brand new flyer that you put out, it went up to over $500. So I'm just saying, these fees are growing. So if we're going to go after fees, I would support anything that supports youth activity. I agree with the individual. It's easier, it's more beneficial to have them activities than to let them deal with incarcerations and that nature. That was not my issue. Also, I heard about the New Vision and Morning Star. Both of those are 501c3 agencies, and they could have partnered. My question is, and when I approved that, so it was not an argument with that, other than the fact that when I looked at the 75 being split between the two, and I see the great demand that's in the community of that 15,000 being split between two is very, very, very nominal in this area, considering some of the prices and stuff that, I mean, some of the rents and stuff that these individuals have to pay, and even putting some of these people up into hotels because they're homeless. So I will never be in opposition of that. Then number 4, I would like to wish Jasmine Humble you know, just much success in any endeavor. I think she's a great asset. She's been a great asset to the board, and that wherever she's going or whatever she's doing, you know, I just want to wish her Godspeed. But I did want to acknowledge, because no matter when we had a question or referred it to some individual that had a question, she was always there. Not only doing county board hours, but off of county board hours to go and explain ARPA to the people. So definitely want to say I appreciate that, and I always want to give kudos to individuals that are that go beyond just their scope of duty to do some other things that normally they don't have to, or they could say wait till working hours. But when they're available, like on call, and they come, I think that just needs to be applauded. Thank you.
Mr. Hess?
No.
A motion to adjourn, is there a second? Mercy killing? Mr. Scanlon, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?